Hello, and welcome to Talking Heads. Brought to you by BikeSocial, existing to skillfully or shamelessly, depending on how you view it, promote Bennetts Rewards. If you're a Bennetts customer and you haven't signed up to rewards yet, then you can get yourself over to rewards@bennetts.co.uk and take advantage of the 150 so offers, competitions, opportunities to do stuff that help you get more from motorcycling. You're kind of crazy not to if you're a customer, really. Today I'm joined by Nick Nomikos from the Two Wheel Centre in Harpenden, and we're just going to talk about the kind of the ins and outs of buying a bike from a dealer. Not just about haggling, but just a bit of insight and just old Nick's experience, really. Just how does a dealer work, and just so we can understand the process, really, when we're in there and buying a bike. So tell us a bit about yourself, Nick, if you wouldn't mind. How long have you run the shop, and what brought you into the bike trade to start with?
Thank you for having me on here again. My name's Nick. I'm from the Two Wheel Centre in Harpenden. We've been open for 30 years this year. It's the big 3-0. I've been working here ever since I was sort of 11, holidays and school holidays and stuff like that. So I've been around sort of buying, selling bikes, fixing bikes, motorcycle industry for a long time. Apart from that, I obviously repair them, do the MOTs. I'm quite excited for this chat because there's a lot to buying bikes and selling bikes and stuff, and it'd be nice to just give the people insight to what actually goes on when they drop off their bike when they've sold it and then pick up the new one when they buy it.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that with all that experience and all those years, you get to a point where I would look at a bike and I bought a few bikes, sold a few bikes. I think I know what I'm looking for, but I'm guessing you can probably look over a bike and see in seconds what the stuff that I don't see until I get it home in the morning after and think, why didn't I see that? Is that just something? Do you just pick that up as you go along, or will you kind of talk?
Yeah, I mean, there's telltale signs. So the bike has a DNA. So does the customer. So talking to the customer, just on the phone before they turn up and stuff like that, you get a gist of what is going to turn up, And there's a lot of things that you should be looking for when you go to buy a bike privately. But first of all, it's just looking over it from front to back. And then if, for instance, the front tyre is a different brand to the rear tyre, why is that? Is it because it was the cheapest? And if he says to you it's because it was the cheapest, then you've got to think, well, has he done that going around the whole bike? So every time it needed something, did he get good quality parts, or did he just get whatever was about and just throw it on? And this all makes a difference, and you can see that visually, and stuff like that. So to start off with, you need to sort of just listen to the guy who's selling it and see what he's got to say about his motorcycle.
Yeah, and I guess like I said, there's different kind of customers out there. There are some those guys who are just using their bike to get to work and back. Will have a very different approach to looking after their bike and maintenance. It's their bike. It needs to be reliable. It needs to be running, but they won't necessarily put the best parts on it. Whereas there are probably guys who are, it's more a leisure thing. It's their big toy, and maybe they might not maintain it as regularly, but when they do, they'll spend more on it perhaps. I don't know if that makes a difference or not, really.
The other thing is obviously the year of the bike as well. So if you're buying something that's under 2 or 3 years old, chances are they probably haven't done the miles to warrant a service yet. They think it shouldn't have had a service yet. But when you start going through the whole sort of manufacturer servicing guide, you'll find that, a year or the mileage, they're supposed to service it. So you think, it's 2 years old, it's only done sort of 1,000 miles. It's had its first service. I'm good to go. Well, actually, no, you've missed the service already. So when you're looking to price that bike up, these are all things that come into factors, and, tyres and brakes, they don't last as long as they did. So, at 3,000 or 4,000 miles, you could be looking at tyres. So, but at the same, on the other spectrum, if you're buying something that's 10 years old and got 20 or 30,000 miles, you still want to be looking at the same sort of stuff as you're coming to. It's not all about scratches and dents sometimes.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess it's for a dealership like yours, where you've got some franchises but you're not a kind of big multi-franchise dealer. You're the kind of a typical dealer you'd find in a small town. You've got some new bikes, some used bikes. Where does the bulk of your stock come from? Is it mostly Part X, or do you have to actively go out and look for bikes?
I'll be honest with you, at the beginning we actively, used to grab the motorcycle news at, 4:00 on a Wednesday morning and run out and buy them, which then turned into the internet. So you could sit there and sort of scour the internet and stuff like that. But now it's more, because you've been here so long, people just ring you. Or you've sold it to them, or they're a customer who comes in, or they're a friend of a friend who are looking to sell it, or a part exchange. We have, because of this, like the last sort of year or so under the pandemic, we have had a lot more part exchanges because people just don't want people going around their houses, which has made a bit of a difference. But generally, they walk through the door. It's very rare now that I actually go on the internet and stuff like that and go and find them. We seem to get enough offered to us. Especially selling new ones, you get part exchanges. Yeah,
and how do you value a bike? Do you kind of stick religiously by the kind of glasses guides and cap guides, or do you pretty much, is it just part of what you do to know what a bike is worth roughly anyway?
Right, so you need to do your homework really. I don't use the guide. I haven't used it for years because there's some bikes that are worth, bikes and scooters that are worth more or less. And the other thing is, because we sell bikes that could be 10 or 15 years old up until sort of 5 years old, some of them have fallen into that bracket of modern classics. So, the prices are sort of going up. And because restoration's become a big thing now, you can buy things that don't run for £1,000. So that's obviously pushed up the value of stuff that could be 15, 20 years old, but it runs and has MOT and tax. Well, if you're going to pay £1,000 for something that doesn't run, that's going to be restored, then if it starts and runs, it's worth a bit more. So it's market value for me every time. I don't use any kind of books or anything like that. I just have a look, and obviously we have a markup that we need to make, that we can offer sort of extra offers with the bike, so with the warranty and stuff like that, and we need to get it ready. So we have a margin that we have to make, and if we can make it, we'll make it, and that's pretty much it, really.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing, isn't it? I think a lot of people, when they think about dealers, they don't necessarily understand that that running a dealer in that markup that you're going to put on a bike, there's a lot of things that's got to pay for, hasn't it? I mean, there's VAT for one thing, I guess, which is which is 20% straight away. But then there's all the kind of the costs of renting, running a place, having a workshop, having staff in the workshop, in the quiet periods as well as the busy periods. I'm guessing, you might see, well, someone offers me this for my bike, and then a week later it's in his showroom for that much more. And you think, he seems to be making a lot on that. But actually, when you work out all those things that have got to come off there first, I'm guessing there's not a huge amount in each used bike, is there?
I'll be honest with you, it varies. So sometimes depends on, like you say, what the customer thinks his vehicle's worth and what the deal is worth to him. The one bit of advice I would give customers is, on the day that you sealed the deal, was you happy? If you was happy, forget a week down the line, forget what your friend said, forget what your mum said. It's all irrelevant. On the day that you did the deal, was it the best deal that you could find for what you wanted to purchase? And if you was happy, that's it. Because with the dealer, like, people go and buy stuff privately and they're paying probably £200 or £300, £500 less than what I would sell them it. And they think, I've got a bargain. Well, no, you haven't, because there's no comeback to that bike that you've bought now. It could break down, it could be stolen, it could be owed under finance. Did you carry out any checks when you bought it? Or did you just take the gospel of what he said is true and just handed over the money? So for me, if you're even remotely looking to buy it privately yourself, then whatever you can find for a dealer, it's got to be about £1,000 cheaper. Otherwise, it's not worth the risk. So when we get hold of a bike and we agree a price on a bike, when it comes in, what I generally do is while I'm valeting it to get it ready to sell it, that's the best time to check it. So if I see it needs brakes or it needs, or I've missed something when I was, because we miss things as well. It's not like, our minds we're computers. So we miss things. So when it's on the bench and we're cleaning it, that's when I'll scour through. And then obviously as I'm putting it up for sale, that's when I scour through the invoices, the service book and stuff like that properly to see what it had last time and what it's going to cost. So when you start acting all that up and putting it into the price of the bike, and as you said, John, although the VAT has been paid when it was new, we still get charged VAT on the profit. So, whatever you think we're making, we're not actually making that. And then, like you said, we've got overhead. So when we're paying a mechanic to do the MOT and the check over or the service, whatever, they've still got their money to be paid for, and that all comes out of the bike. So it's not a case of we just buy it, clean it, advertise it and put it on. I mean, advertising costs as well. It's through the roof as well now, Like us, we like to put a video of it running, got all the pictures and stuff like that. Well, that all costs extra. It's not free. If you do it as a consumer, to a certain extent, they'll let you do loads of things. But as a dealer, it's like, oh, you want to do this? Tick. You want to do that? Tick. And every time there's a tick, there's extra money going down the line. So we turn a profit and we enjoy what we do. But there is costs in it, and there is a difference between buying private and buying from a dealer.
And I guess it's important, isn't it? Because you'd rather, if there is something that needs replacing on a bike or something that needs doing, I'm sure you'd rather do that before it's sold and have a happy customer who's got a bike that's lovely than have them have to come back and say, did you know the brake discs are warped on this, or did you know that, because it's better to do it all first, isn't it? And so you're happy with the bike and they're happy with the bike.
Yeah. So the way I do it, the way I like to do it anyway, is that we even fill the tanks up with petrol, because that guarantees that customer is going to do a minimum of 100 miles without it actually costing him any money.
Yeah.
So we do that, and like you say, when someone buys something, and they've had it sort of a day, 2 days, 3 days, and it goes wrong, that's a disaster, because they've parted, and it doesn't matter how much money you earn, it's still your money, your hard-earned money that you've paid for that's gone wrong. So like you say, we do our best to try and get them ready. So when they're ready and they go out, they don't come back. And because of the way things are with Google reviews and Facebook reviews and all that, you can't afford these days for it to go wrong. And at the same time, it's the difference between, like we were saying before private and retail, is when they do come back is how you deal with the problem as well. So we generally, we even ride them, not sort of massive miles. We sort of try and put sort of 7 or 8 miles on them, sometimes 10, just to make sure that when they leave, they're spot on, because you don't want them coming back.
I think most people probably don't realise that if you're doing this for a living, if you're used to doing this, you can learn an awful lot about a bike in 7 or 8 miles. If you know what you're looking for and you know what generally goes wrong, 7 or 8 miles doesn't sound like a lot, but actually, if you know what you're looking for and you know what you're testing, you can work out an awful lot about a bike in that time, can't you?
Well, I'll be honest with you, we can't guarantee it 100%. Hence why there is warranty. And that's why there is warranty. We're giving you a warranty because we cannot guarantee you that it's going to go wrong. The same as when you buy a new vehicle and it comes with 2 years warranties, because they cannot guarantee that it's not going to go wrong. So therefore, we're giving you this as extra just in case it does. But that also, that's like that road test. If it's got an intermittent fault that only happens after 25 miles, we're not going to find it, So we don't know is the true story if it's going to go wrong on you, but we've done the best that we can to sort of get it ready. And even, I know it sounds silly, but as a dealer, when I get a bike in, I don't charge the battery. So you see some dealerships, they've all got them on trickle charges. I don't, because if I walk up to it 4 days later or 5 days later and it doesn't start, it needs a new battery. Because that's what you're going to do. That's what the customer's going to do. The chances are he's not going to put it on a trickle charger. He's going to leave it in the garage for a week or 2 weeks. And then if it doesn't go and he's just bought it, it'd be ringing me. So I'd rather it was sitting here uncharged so I get a true sort of reading of what the bike's doing. And then obviously when we get them in the workshop, that's when we trickle charge them back up. So when they go out, they're ready to go, you know. But there's a lot of tricks like that we do, you know, because we're trying to find a fault with it, if that makes sense, whilst we're trying to sell it at the same time.
Yeah, and most of that, like I say, it's a good routine, and most of that stuff doesn't actually cost you a lot more money. You know, it's a little bit of time, and it's another thing on the checklist. But doing that doesn't cost a huge amount of money unless it does need a new battery. I'm guessing the majority of bikes you get in probably they might need the odd consumable replacing, but I'm guessing there's not that much wrong with most of them because you're smart enough to know the difference between a good one and a bad one.
I tell you the one thing that we always do find with them is they're always due a service. Always. Yeah. You know, they'll come to a point, a customer will come to the point and think, he's already thinking about selling it. So he doesn't want to spend any more money on it. So when they trade it in, it's actually not been serviced at all, or, it's due a service. It's well overdue. So I tell you what, when you buy something from a retailer, I think you get a pretty good deal. It's just that you can't see it because you're seeing it firsthand. You're not seeing it the way I saw it when it came in. So maybe that should be the way forward. Should I have a checklist with what I've replaced on it? Would that be better for them? Would they like that? I don't know. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't.
It'd be interesting because as a customer, I guess if you think, if you're looking down, if you're looking down a website with a whole load of stock on there, and some of those are private sale bikes and some of those are dealer bikes, you see the difference in prices. But actually, like you say, you don't see... So the private sale bike I look at that looks identical to the one that you've got in your showroom, I don't know that you've already been through that bike and checked that and that and that and replaced those things that need replacing. Whereas on the private sale bike, 2 ads above it, I've got no idea what's been replaced. And he may say in the advert, it might, but I guess also there's those things as well. And there's some of them, when you say that, most of them need a service when they come in, that might be a relatively simple service, an oil change and whatever. But I guess if it's something like, some of those later Honda VFRs, where the valve clearance service is pretty much an engine out job, that's a hell of a job, isn't it? If something needs that, and I guess that when you buy a bike like that if you're going to buy a VFR 1200, when that big service is due, and I would...
Yeah, I mean, for me... with that, it's all about the invoicing. So for argument's sake, when we buy Ducatis that got belts on them, if I don't have an invoice with the belt part number on done at a dealer, I'm changing them.
Yeah.
Because it could be that the 16,000 mile service is due belts, but if there's a stamp in the book, but if there's no invoice to back it up, was it done? Wasn't it done?
Yeah.
You don't know. So I mean, obviously I'm not sure if I'm going off point, but buying a second-hand bike from anywhere, retail or private, you need to sort of, it's not only what it looks like, and a lot of people go on that, what it looks like, and it's the paperwork, the bit behind it. That's the bit you really want to be looking at, and that's why, like I said to you, with a dealer, when you buy it and they service it or say it needed a service and they've done it, that's because they've checked the paperwork and they know it's due. If you bought that bike privately, like, it could have a stamp in the book each year, but what service did it have? Did it just have an oil and filter? Do you have the bare minimum just to get a stamp in the book?
Yeah.
So it's difficult. It is difficult.
Yeah, and I guess from an owner's point of view, it reinforces the importance of keeping that paperwork, because I would imagine, let's say when you're buying a bike, if someone turns up with a massive folder full of invoices and paperwork, then it's going to help them get the best possible price when they're selling it, because you can be confident that that there's only a limited amount of stuff you might have to do with it, even if it does need another service at that point.
I think you're absolutely right. For me, if a bike turns up and it has the service book with the corresponding invoices, when I'm trying to sell it to you, I can't beat that.
Yeah.
So, and if it's also, if it's quite new and it's always been serviced by a main dealer, that makes a difference for me. Because even if I find that most of the manufacturers are quite good. So we've had bikes before that have sneaked out a warranty, but have had a fault. And then because it was always serviced by the manufacturer and it's a full service history, they'll give us the part for free, goodwill and stuff like that. So, and I think that is, shows that the vehicle's been looked after, and that, it's, if you've got a matching invoice with the stamp in the book, from a dealer's point of view, he's going to give you more for that bike, or he's going to want that bike. If you've got two bikes and one is just a key and a logbook and an MOT, I mean, now you can check MOTs online and stuff like that, which you couldn't years ago. But, and if I get another bike that is, the same year, same make, same model, colour, everything, but it's got two keys, owner's manual, service book, also a wad of files, corresponding with the service book, I'm going to want that bike. So I'm going to do, that's when, when we go on to what we pay for stuff, and, that makes a difference. That makes a big difference. I'm not saying it has to have the toolkit under the seat, because they all go missing, and sometimes I think people will, they'll leave the condition a bit for the service history. So if they're looking at a couple of bikes, but there's one with all the paperwork and that, but it's just a bit furry, and they've got one that looks immaculate, but it's a key and a logbook, chances are they're going to go the one with the service history and all the books for the money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I had a recent example of that. We bought a VFR 800 for a BikeSocial project bike just before Christmas, and it was a really strange one because it's a one owner from New Bike. It had done 94,000 miles. It didn't have much of a proper service history, but the guy was an engineer, and he gave me a little memory stick with it. And there's a spreadsheet on this thing, and he detailed every single thing this bike had ever had, every tank of petrol, pretty much every mile it had ever done, every tyre change, every oil change. And you looked at it and you thought, and it ran sweet as a nut. That was the other thing. It rode beautifully. It ran sweet as a nut. And we paid 500 quid for it. So the point being that it can still be a money pit because it's still on the original exhaust. It's still on the original shock absorber. It made an interesting project bike for us because we want to see what a 94,000 mile VFR was like. But going back to what you said, it was just the kind of the attention to detail that came with that bike just made you think he is everything that needed doing to this bike is done. He's looked after it. He'd just come back from a trip to Spain on it so it set off to Spain having done 91,000 miles, came back having done 94,000, and it was a very easy bike to buy, even though there were several pointers that would normally, alarm bells if you like, that would normally be ringing. But it was exactly that. It was the history was so well documented what he had done. He thought.
See, I don't worry about bikes with miles or age as long as they've been looked after.
Yeah.
And if that bike's got to 90,000 and it's still got the original exhaust on, that means it's been used and it all works and stuff, because the condensation has got caught in the collector at the bottom and put a hole in it because he's been using it. There's nothing wrong with motorcycles that have been used as long as they've been looked after properly. And that's one thing I think with motorcyclists, they get to 30,000 and they think it's life's over. Bike's got 30,000 miles, But if it's been looked after properly, I don't think it's a problem, because the bikes now, they're just lasting longer and longer, and people are starting to use them. They're starting to do more miles on them.
I think it is important. The other thing I was going to ask you was about accessories. So, if someone's if someone's bringing a bike in to part exchange or sell it, are there certain accessories that are more valuable than others, or are there some that will just put you off completely, or is it? Would you just prefer everything to be standard if possible?
Right. So it's a funny one. It's a weird one. For me, I don't mind what accessories are on the bike, as long as they've got the standard ones to swap them back over.
Yeah.
Because it's all very well buying an exhaust. When you buy an exhaust and you put it on because you want to, that's fine. But are you putting it on because you've dropped it? Are you putting it on because it corroded? Why did you put it on? You know? So, like, if you haven't got the standard bits to put with it, for me, it doesn't... it doesn't make the price go up or down. It just makes more or less work for me. So if you've got an exhaust which isn't road legal, like a Harley Davidson with a set of slash clutches, I can't sell it like that. So all of a sudden I've got to find a set of pipes. But at the same time, if you're buying it privately, technically you still should be buying a set of pipes because you shouldn't be able to get through an MOT. So it's one of them. But I think I don't look at a bike and think, oh, there's been thousands spent on it. You know, I'm going to give him more money, or I want it more. And then there's certain accessories. The only thing I will say about accessories is there's certain accessories that go to bikes. So, for instance, a Suzuki with a Yoshimura exhaust is the two go together. A Ducati with a set of Terminolis, they go together. You know, so if it's all about the resale. And what I will tell you about retail and the customers is that each motorcyclist knows what he wants his motorcycle to look like. So he may be grateful that it's got small indicators on it or handlebar mirrors or an exhaust or whatever, but the next person won't. So when you're looking to sell this bike to them, there is always a picture in their mind of what they want it to look like. Now, do the accessories start that road, or is it exactly how they want it? That's up to them. But the only thing I can do that helps me is get the standard bits with the bike when I buy it. So should they not like it, they can swap it back. And then your quid's in then, aren't you?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I guess it's interesting at the moment because a lot of the manufacturers at the moment are really pushing their own range of accessories, aren't they? It's a lot easier now to buy, you know, whether it be a Honda, Yamaha, Triumph, whatever, with factory luggage, factory heater grips, and factory exhausts, aftermarket exhausts, than it was a few years ago. So I guess I don't know whether, in those circumstances, I guess you can have your brand new Triumph with an aftermarket exhaust on now, can't you? So I guess in those, it's knowing, isn't it, for you? It's knowing the difference between that was a factory part.
Yeah. It's not so much the factory part. I think with the point of the value of your bike, obviously selling it or buying it, is that what the manufacturers do is if they're having a bit of a slum, they'll release a bike with a certain amount of accessories. Yeah. And what they'll do that, for instance, I think Kawasaki did it with the Versys, didn't they? They gave loads of them with panniers and then stopped. Well, all of a sudden, if you'd bought one with no panniers, you know, people don't want it because they haven't got the panniers. And BMW do it all the time. You know, they'll supply it, some with all the cases and some without. Well, they're £500, £600 a box. So, you know, all of a sudden, if you've bought a bike and it hasn't got those accessories that were sold with it when it was new the year after or the year before, that can affect your value of your bike. And it's very expensive to then go and match it to try and get more for your bike. So just when they're buying, you know, sometimes you've got to do a bit more research. It's all right if you don't want the side panniers, but if you're going to buy one and it has got the side panniers and you're going to buy one that hasn't and they're the same money, well, hold on, why don't I just buy them and put them in the loft? And then when I sell it, it's got all the panniers. Because I guarantee you it will make a difference in what a dealer would want to pay for it if it has or hasn't got the certain accessories that another one would have come out with when it was new. Yeah,
that makes sense. The other thing I was going to ask you, when we spoke to a guy a few years ago who was kind of doing a similar kind of thing to what we're doing now, but we were talking about kind of big franchise dealers and how they work. And a lot of that conversation revolved around things like finance. We talked about, you know, how finance matters and all the kind of different kinds of finance you can get now. Is that still important for the kind of dealership that you run? Is finance as big a part of it as it is for the kind of the really big main dealers selling bikes at 2 or 3 times the price that your typical bikes are?
Well, what I will say, that there is a difference, I think. See, every time I sell a scooter, a motorcycle, a helmet. I'm trying to build a relationship with the customer. Okay, so for me, finance is a tool for the customer. I don't, we say we do it, and we will give them a quote, but I won't push it on them. It's up to them. It's up to them to make the decision whether they want to do it or not. But the problem with big dealers is that they, to a certain extent, will make it look so affordable because obviously it's a spin-off for them. So they can get the finance and they think, right, now I'm going to get him to borrow some money. I can get him to buy everything else that goes with it, And for me, I find that doesn't work from the point of building a relationship, because motorcyclists, they'll either keep it a year or 2 years tops and they'll be back. And then all of a sudden, they owe so much and the bike's worth so much. And that I'm not building a reputation, I'm not building anything with the customer. For me, every time I'm selling something, I'm building a relationship, and that's trust and stuff like that. The difference, what money I would make out of it and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I'm a business and I have to. But was you happy when you left? Did you get a vehicle that you liked? And finance is just one of those things. Some dealers really push it because they're trying to make it look nicer, the deal nicer, And the thing is, finance has changed now because, people can get 0% credit cards, they can get bank loans, they can, some people even extend their overdrafts to buy bikes. It's amazing how they find the money to pay for them. But finance, I think, is difficult these days because people know what it's about now. It's not, if it's 0% from the manufacturer, that's different because everyone knows what 0% is. But when they're walking in off the street, I generally find they'll pay for it by some sort of rewards card. So if they've got like some sort of air miles or like I say, they get 0% credit card or a bank loan or something.
It's interesting. It's an interesting point you make as well, because I think we've all done it, where you sign up for a finance agreement for 3 years or 4 years because that's the way you can afford that bike you want, and within 2 years you're looking at changing your bike, and I think that's such a common part of biking, isn't it? It's an emotional purchase. It's a passionate thing. It's not a utility thing like buying a car, is it? It's you buy a bike, you love it for a couple of years, and then you see something else you want, and I'm certainly I've done my share of it in the past where you probably lost a lot of money one way or the other by closing finance deals early because you just decided at that moment I've got to have that bike, and we sort of do it because again it's part of our passion, but it's not. I guess from a dealer point of view, it's quite frustrating.
Yeah, but I think that's what you stumbled on a good point there. I mean, that's one thing I will say. Whether you buy it trade or retail, what people have got to realise is the moment they take it home, they've already lost money.
Yeah.
So, to buy something and sell it, and because everyone's always concerned on not losing money, but what I think is that did you enjoy that vehicle? Where did you go on it? What did you do? Yeah. People who buy scooters to go to work, for instance, they'll come in, and say, "Oh, Nick, tyre, £45. It's a lot of money." So yeah, but if you've got a cab to work every day, £45 isn't a lot of money, is it? Yeah. So it's like that, and it's a difficult one, but people need to. It's not always what it costs you. Did you get the fun out of it? The one thing I always say to people when they come in to buy a bike and they're not sure whether they want a change, and I say to them, the first time you get 10 minutes or half an hour to yourself, is the bike the first thing that pops into your mind?
Yeah.
If it isn't, get rid of it and get something that does. Is it at the back of the garage with the bicycles propped up next to it and it's covered with the garden furniture chairs and covers? Get rid of it. Because if it's sitting there, it's going to cost you money and you're not using it.
Yeah.
And, for me, if it doesn't, everyone works hard. That's the one thing I will say. Out of all the customers and everyone who works, generally every day, obviously retired people, not the same boat, but if they work, that's their hard-earned money, and they don't get a lot of time to themselves. But if it's not the first thing that comes into your mind when you've got a spare hour, buy something that will be. Because once you start losing the love for the bike, that's when you start missing services. That's when, you think, the weather's crap this year, I won't get it out. And then, where normally sort of now March, April, they start to think, the weather's all right, let's get them out. If it was still snowing, they wouldn't do it till July. And then July, they'll think, I'll give it a miss this year. What's the point? And the other thing they do is only tax them for 6 months, which I think is crazy, because now we're walking around November in T-shirts, but they won't ride them because they've got no tax.
Yeah.
So, different story that, but yeah.
No, it is true. It's a really interesting point, I think. And as biking becomes more of a leisure thing, I think that becomes even more important. It's, and I guess where you are, you're kind of, Harpenden, Hertfordshire, you're sort of on the edge. I'm guessing you've probably got a mixture of customers who are just buying a bike because it's a commuter thing, because it's a way of getting about, as well as the kind of leisure riders as well, really.
Yeah, we're quite lucky. So we do have people that just for fun go on tours, just up to a biker cafe on a Sunday if that's what they want, and then we've got the other guys, because we're 25 miles out of the London. They're on the M1 and the A1 going south. But it's I have to say, the way they pay for them though is totally different. The people that use them for fun, they're the ones that will finance them. Yeah. And the ones using them for work, they're the ones that pay up front for them. It's weird.
Yeah. Which is sort of counterintuitive in a way, isn't it? Because we all, when we sit in the office and we're thinking about, how do we do content on BikeSocial for commuters in particular, we see it as, because it's a utility thing, we almost see it as, well, this is an alternative to your season ticket. And as a commuter, if you've been used to having a season ticket in that part of the world, you probably think, well, I pay this much for that, and I pay this much for my car parking at the station, and I pay this much. So for us, we think, actually, it's a really easy thing to say, well, if I did that on finance, instead of paying, 400 quid a month for all my season ticket and stuff, I end up paying 100 quid a month for a scooter and insurance and whatever. And that seems like a really easy calculation to do. But yeah, when you talk to them, they go, no, just buy it.
Finance is one of those things. People either love it or don't love it, Yeah. But people just don't, they don't want to let go of their money. And I think that's just anyone, if they can pay for it slowly. But it's all got to be what they think of finance, I find, Yeah. I don't think, some of them actually do sit down on paper and work out what it actually costs them. Other people just don't care because they have this sort of mobile phone mentality now, years ago, you pay sort of £40-50 a month for a phone. People are going, but I only pay £60 a quarter. Why am I going to pay 50? And the age group that's coming up now, they'll buy a bike on finance and pay, have a balloon payment at the end and walk away. Whereas a lot of people won't. And it's finance is not a tool for me it's there for the customer's use, but it's not a tool for me to sell bikes. We have it as an option, but it's their choice.
Yeah, that's fair. I said, well, one last question. What are the bikes that are kind of, if someone rings up and says, I've got one of these, and would you be interested in it? What are the bikes that, if you could have a lorry load delivered tomorrow, that you'd climb over anything to get hold of, because you can sell them quicker than anything else? What are the things that you absolutely delight in when they come through the door?
That's actually quite a hard question for me, because if I could turn the camera around, I've got a W Reg Harley Davidson in here. I've got a Shovelhead Harley Davidson, and then I've got a 2018 SV650. But then there's an MTV 650. So our spectrum is very, very wide of what we sell. And obviously we've got the new Peugeot scooters and MASH motorcycles. So it's very, we generally sell whatever we buy, but I don't have any favourites. But I would say I'll go back to what I said earlier, that it's the bike, really.
Yeah.
I get more excited if it's like, for instance, a KTM, the Duke that I've got. It's only done under 3,000 miles, but it's got keys, books, invoices, everything. For me, that's the one. I'll if I had to travel 60 miles to buy that bike, I would go. But it wouldn't make a difference to me what it is, because each motorcycle has its owner just waiting. We don't. It's not like years ago where, if it was an R1, a CBR 600 or a Fireblade, we'd run out and buy it, because not everyone wants a sports bike anymore.
Yeah.
It's there is nothing for me that, there is no favourite models as such, because they all sell, really. If they're the right price and the right sort of mileage and stuff, they'll all go. I don't have a particular favourite, no.
No, it's interesting, but I think, going back to what you said before, it is interesting that I think it's the bike and the owner and the history of the bike that makes a difference. And I think we do all forget that. I'm sure, like most people, I've got all my paperwork and documents for my bikes in a folder somewhere, but I don't always keep stuff. I get it serviced, and sometimes I remember to put the invoice in the folder with it. Sometimes I don't, and and it never really occurs to me. But when I buy a bike, I always really like it when I get that folder, and it's got that, just because it shows you that, like you say, that the bike has been looked after, that they have been. I give you an example. The Phaser that I run at the moment, one of the thing that actually sold it to me in the end was the guy who had it before me had just replaced the chain and sprockets, and he'd replaced them with a genuine OE Yamaha chain and sprockets, and knowing how the difference in price between a Yamaha one and an aftermarket one, you think, if that's his view on the world, that that when you replace your chain and sprockets on what was a 1,600 quid bike, that you do it with a genuine Yamaha one, that was kind of sold. I almost didn't need to know anymore.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say for sort of top tips of buying a bike from a dealer is that they want to sell you a motorcycle, so I don't think you have to particularly try hard. But what I will say is try and build a relationship with the dealer that you're trying to buy a bike from. Listen to the advice he's giving you, and obviously have a price in your mind of what you want to pay, and just talk to the guy. Because I'm sure, people are always trying to get the best out of the deal, but the best out of the deal is that you leave happy. The more obstacles you put in between, you're not going to leave happy. So if you're honest with the dealer and the dealer's honest with you, you will get a decent service, and you will get the bike that you want. But you've got to be able to give and take. It's not about him giving you the most amount for yours and trying to get as much money off of his as you can, because that's just not going to work. And if you want to go through the rigmarole of selling it, then sell it and approach the dealer with cash, but don't expect him to take £1,000 off just because you've walked in with cash, because it's not going to happen. Which is, a lot of people have been watching those American programs where they all go around buying stuff and knocking thousands of pounds off. But I'd say, top tips, build a relationship with the dealer. I know you're only in there probably 2 or 3 times to buy a new bike or a used bike, but once you've got that reputation with your customer, I mean, I've got a customer that I've sold him 30 bikes over the years. He came in in 91 and bought his first CG125. And the last thing I sold him before Christmas was a Ducati Panigale, And now when he comes in, it's effortless. And he almost waits till I've got something that he wants, and he'll just ring me and say, Nick, this is this is it. I want this bike. Do me a deal. Let me know. And those sales for me are brilliant. When I get can my mate come and ride it? Can I this? Can I that? Can you do this? Can you do that? And, you try and help them out as much as you can, but you can't take money off and do things and give you the most for the part exchange. That's not going to work. But build a relationship with your dealer.
Yeah, it's really good advice. And and the kind of the flip side of that, I think, is we've all done it, haven't we? Where we've all travelled 100 miles to go and and buy a bike where we might have saved 200 or 300 quid, on the price we could have got it from a dealer, but bought it privately from a bloke in the dark that we didn't know, with no idea really what the bike is. We get it home the night after. We've still got to sell our own bike private sale and go through all the cost and hassle of that. And then when you get the bike home and you look at it the morning after, like I said earlier, you suddenly spot all the things you never saw when you went to see it.
The reason I said build a relationship is because there's a customer of mine, unbeknown to here, his son moved to London and we were servicing his Triumph Speed Triple. And he rang me up from Leeds and said, I've seen an XJR 1300. I want to buy it. And I said, okay, blah, 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 blah. This is delivery, da, 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 da. He says, okay, brilliant. I said, do you want no extra pictures or this, that and the other? He says to me, no. I did tell my son to come in and see you, but because he deals with you, he says it's spot on and it'll be fine, don't worry. So I sent it to Leeds. About 2 years later, I get a phone call. You know that Speed Triple, Nick, that you've got in the showroom? Do you remember me? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I remember. How you doing? He goes, oh, yeah. So I said, well, your son's moved back now. He said, yeah, he has. Yeah, he's moved back up. And he says, I want that Speed Triple, please. And I said to him, how's the XJR? He says, as you sold it to me. He says, all I've done is put about 3,000 miles on it and I've had it serviced locally. He says, fine. And we done the deal. The bike went up there and the bike come back. Now, when I said to you, build a relationship, that's brilliant. But if he had rung me just to buy it, I'd have bought it. Because I had that relationship with him. So there's nothing wrong with buying bikes from far away and getting them delivered. Because if you build a good solid relationship when you're buying it, why not ring the supply and dealer back up in a year's time or 2 years' time instead of part exchanging it and saying to them? But if you've, tied him down on the price, you didn't get a good feeling when you left, there was something not right when you left, and it was a bit of bitterness on your end or his end, you won't pick up the phone, and I think that's lost. That's the bit that's lost. So just that I would say that would make all the difference really when you're buying a bike. Just get on with the salesman and stuff. Try and build a relationship.
Yeah, and interesting. I think the other video of these we did a couple of years ago, that was the message that came out from that guy was exactly the same. I said don't see it as a kind of adversarial thing. Just see, he wants to sell you a bike, you want to buy a bike, you're both into bikes. Strike up a relationship, get to know each other, and just kind of do the right things with it. And like I say, if you go in and the first question is, what will you knock off, or what's your lowest price? It just sets the relationship up wrong, doesn't it?
Well, it's not that it sets it off wrong. For me, it's if my adverts are quite detailed, so it'll even say the last time it was serviced and stuff like that. So all the information's there. So the fact that they want money off is not a builder or a break sort of thing on the thing, but it is. I think from the point of the salesman, he's trying to figure out what it is that you want so he can make you happy. So if you come out and tell him, initially, I like your bike, I've seen it on the internet, however, it's up for £3,000, I want to pay £2,750. For me, that's great, because I now know what he wants and I know what he wants to pay for it. And in somewhere we can try and get a deal. I could just say no, or he could just say, he's changed his mind. It will happen. But if you're honest, that's fine, But if you start saying, can you send me pictures of all the scratches? Can do, but it's a second-hand bike, The pictures are, on the internet, you can see them, So what I'm trying to say is the more you take the time up of the dealer, if he'd said to me, has it got any scratches? I'd say, well, listen, there's no gravel rash on it where it's gone down the road. There's a few stone chips on it and stuff like that. If he said to me, can you send me a picture of the stone chips? I'll do it, because it's a distant sale if he can't come in, or because now it's click and collect and stuff like that. But it's difficult sometimes. But I would never discourage anyone from buying distance. But it's just basically make sure you're happy when you leave, so you can ring up and go back.
Yeah, it's a good point. That's great. Thanks for that, Nick. I really enjoyed it. I I could talk for ages about this stuff, but I know you've probably got a business to run, and
I'm off today. I picked a day off.
oh, that's all right then. No, thanks for that. That was really interesting, and yeah, hopefully we'll speak again soon.